Welcome to Honzuki no Gokokujo Week 7, Ascendance of a Bookworm. It's about a little girl who's been transported to another world who originally wasn't a little girl but still loves books the same way she usually does. Last episode I didn't get to cover, but last episode was kind of a delightful little piece of the interaction between Mine and Lutz and how they've grown into kind of like this working partnership. We learned more about how a merchant works, a traveling merchant. Mine encouraged Lutz to give up on the dream of becoming a merchant just because merchants kind of have a rough life. And then they kind of went into more about her illness, and it's apparently something called the devouring, which is not something that we've heard before, but it is some like major disease that happens in this world. And I've kind of made a joke of this before, but Dr. Stone focuses so much on getting to antibiotics, and Mine doesn't give a shit about antibiotics. She just wants to make various books. Also, love that she's not just giving out her proprietary solutions to things, like you can't give out the milk, give out the cow, you gotta give out the milk, otherwise how are you gonna make money, etc., etc. Also, this anime is just Spice and Wolf. Like, it is just Spice and Wolf. I had heard about I didn't actually, there were no comments mentioning the resemblance to Spice and Wolf. Me, just out of my own curiosity, ended up reading like 40 or 50 chapters of Spice and Wolf as research, so now I feel like I have a better insight into where this show is coming from, because I feel like the similarities are such that they invite comparison on a very like granular level. So look forward to that in this episode. Without further ado, I say after 2 minutes of an intro, let's get started. This is going into a little bit more about the thing that I didn't talk about last episode, which is that we kind of got to see the north side of town, which is the more affluent kind of rich society part. And it turns out that the soldier here is actually married to someone, and he used to be a merchant. So he's the one who gave that lecture to Lutz about you don't really want to be a merchant. It's not really something that people willingly do. It's just something that they end up doing because they don't have any other choice. Which reminds me, of course, of Lawrence in Spice and Wolf, whose dream is to set up a shop and live in a town. And that's basically exactly what the soldier tells Lutz, is that trading merchants, their whole dream is to become a citizen. And you already are a citizen. Don't give that up, because you just want to get right back in again. Think about it a little bit more. And Mine's like, see, if Mine had told him that, he wouldn't have listened, and Mine knows that because, Mine is like a smart librarian from somewhere. Sometimes you just gotta let it come from the horse's mouth, and that works out better in the long run. If you've ever had anyone who's really stubborn in your friend circle and they don't really listen to anything you gotta say, sometimes you just let them make the mistake that they perhaps wouldn't have made if you had told them otherwise, and then they learn from that much better than if you had just told them. Sometimes you have to learn it the hard way. Some people are just like that, or if some people are more receptive, more kind of like open to information from other sources other than their own experience, sometimes you can get like someone who's been through that to talk to them, and that works out. And that's what ended up happening. Mine, super genius Mine, she ended up making that work for Lutz. Just wanted to mention that. Also, shampoo is really picking up. Shampoo in this show is kind of like the burgers in Log Horizon, where it's a thing that changes the world. Basically everyone wants it. Even Otto's like, hey, let me get this for my wife, and he kicks her out, and they get to it immediately afterwards. So let's keep going. Every time she goes and talks about a business deal, I just get like major Phineas and Ferb vibes, where they just keep asking them, aren't you a little too young to be doing this? And you're like, yes, we are. And Mine and Lutz are just like, there was a shot in episode 6 where they were about 2 feet tall, and they're talking to two fully grown adults like they're equals. And there's nobody has any problem with that, which is, I think, one of the more refreshing aspects of this show, is that they just treat this kind of like kids as adults thing as perfectly normal, which is kind of, I think, how you should approach kids. Like, if you baby them and don't talk down to them, ultimately I don't think that works in their benefit. So to have the adults of whatever century this is, 16th, 15th century, just talk to Mine and Lutz like they're completely like adult and able to handle every business aspect of this deal, is just refreshing in a setting of this kind. Oh, yikes. He's like, you don't really know what you're talking about. How about we just sell it and then we give you 10% royalty? And she's like, how about I make the paper and my friend sells it and you just give us this stuff? Like, we'll give you a commission instead of you giving us a commission. Mine's like next level on this business stuff. This is just Spice and Wolf, but more wholesome. This is great. Yo, people are getting suspicious that mine is some like next level, like not really a little girl. There's a subplot to like this in Spice and Wolf, where there's a particular person who's very good at their job, but because they're so good at their job, it makes other people suspicious. That's all I'll say about that. But I think mine is going to get more, suspected, maybe persecuted in some way going forward. I hope it's not in some like systematic bring this person down type way. I hope it's more like a who are you really type way. Because I feel like some healthy suspicion makes it like her need to hide who she really is more, and then it makes her actions more careful. Like she has to take things into consideration. She can't just do whatever she wants. I think that could make the show more interesting. But if they just out and out declare like a bounty on her or whatever, I don't think that would make the show better. But some like healthy suspicion I think would help make the show more thoughtful in that sense. This is the first time we've seen magic in this world at all. I think we didn't even know there was magic until now, unless I'm mistaken. I might have forgotten something that they mentioned before, but it's interesting that there is magic because the very first scene or whatever that the commenter said was a spoiler for future developments. There was like some magic liquid or something being used in that scene, I vaguely recall. So this magic is probably going to come back in to tie somewhere. If there is magic, then maybe they can use it to cure her disease, or maybe her disease is caused by magic. That would be really bad. That would kind of explain why when she gets kind of angry in her bed, when she's depressed about stuff, her eyes turn rainbow or whatever. Maybe that makes her illness worse. Maybe that's what is like keeping her from just living an active, normal life. These are all questions we have. I hopefully will get answers to. Episode 6 and 7 so far, the pace of the series has been picking up pretty well. I wouldn't say this show is like really slow. I would say it's methodical because you get like morsels of information in every episode, and as well you get like the wholesome interaction between mine and everyone around her. She does some kind of cute businessy thing, which if you look at it from the point of view that she's a little girl and not like a 20-something librarian who got killed and teleported to this world, it makes it even more cute. But other than that, the show is like really starting to pick up the pace and developments. New characters are being introduced at a higher pace than before. The first 5 episodes we really only met mine, her family, and her friends. Now we get like Otto-san's wife, we get the merchant guy, there's a company that she's now contracted with to apprentice with after her baptism or whatever, on the condition that she makes paper. Like a lot of things are happening very quickly now, and that's of course very good. Let's keep watching.
変だ。お前、本当にマインだよな。
Yo, he actually caught on really quickly because he hasn't really been interacting with mine that long because she's so sick all the time. It really only took him like 3 episodes to figure out that this isn't mine, and it really only took one conversation if you think about it like super analytically. He's been kind of dealing with her at a kid-to-kid level until now, which she's managed to fake, and also her like weird kind of adult talk downy to himness, like, oh, you did good at remembering your name, while she's discussing like contract details, kind of makes him feel like, oh, aren't we both kids? How are you able to do this? It seems kind of weird, especially because he knew mine before, she was inhabited by this other person. Lutz, you're really onto things here. This is probably like the worst type of imposter syndrome you can actually get, because she's literally an imposter in this world. She's pretending to be someone else who she actually isn't. It just so happens that that person is the daughter of a family who has friends and people that love her before she was this person. And she's kind of been able to ignore all of that up till now just because she's so focused on doing other things, but it is something she's going to have to confront at some point because she's really not mine. And even though she's able to do things through mine, the things that she's doing don't really serve mine's interest in any way. They serve her interests mostly. So for her to kind of like take over this little girl's life, of course there have to be some kind of like bad feelings about that, and we're getting kind of that manifest in this kind of interesting visual sequence. Would you want to live a life like that? I wouldn't personally. It'd be just extremely weird having to deal with someone else's family and friends and everything. And even if you were able to kind of reconcile it a bit after some time in the body, I feel like there would always be a little bit of dissociation with it, and maybe mine is experiencing like that very same thing. she just collapses. This episode has been sick. So she basically like talked as an equal to an adult who's an actual merchant discussing contract details. Lutz found out about her basically, but she kind of guilt tripped him, so he wasn't able to express his feelings completely. We're still making progress towards becoming paper, and now she has like a guaranteed like income at the end of that, and now she collapses. Like, we've completed the bingo. This is bingo for the show. Of all the things that they've been dealing with, all have taken some developmental turn in this episode. Whew. Okay, so that was episode 7 of Ascendance of a Bookworm. Interesting episode, to say the least. So we had developments on basically every front. Like Lutz basically figured her out, and even though he doesn't think she's malevolent in any way, like she's not some kind of demon or something that's possessed mine, he doesn't really want to acknowledge her as mine because he knew her beforehand, and he doesn't think this is the same person. They talked to Benno, the merchant. They've signed a contract. They're going to apprentice with his company after they get baptized next year, provided they make paper. He's actually helping them out. They have a workshop and tools and everything to make the paper. Not to mention that it also seems like there's some distance developing between her and Turi. I guess because Turi's older, she feels like she has to be the responsible one, and mine is kind of like this super genius who's like making things and forming contracts before it's even time for her to apprentice anywhere, and she kind of feels left out in that sense, and kind of mundane that she has to do this seamstress life, where mine is kind of like this rising superstar type person, or it could just be that she's genuinely concerned about her health and she doesn't want her to do stuff that makes her weaker. It's probably a mix of the two, probably. Interesting episode. This show is just like the perfect mix of her doing interesting things every episode to advance her like a desire to make books or paper or be a librarian or whatever it is. She's also decided to take Lutz with her along the way, so she finds ways to help him out every episode, and the dynamic between them is kind of like the dynamic between Lawrence and Hollow in Spice and Wolf, except that there's no weird like sexual tension to it because they're kids. There's just kind of like a genuine care for each other, and one person is kind of a mystical being, and one person just wants to be a merchant. If you are looking for something very similar to this, you probably already know about Spice and Wolf, but if you don't know about Spice and Wolf, this is Spice and Wolf, except the difference is she makes inventions and then sells them, and Lawrence just gets goods and then sells them. There's lots of merchant chicanery along the way, but that's like it's almost a one-to-one comparison. There are very few differences, but the differences kind of make the show in my experience with this show. So Ascendance of a Bookworm, episode 7, really solid episode. We're moving like at a really high pace. I haven't looked to see how many episodes this core of this show has. I don't think it can be more than one core just by how fast we're moving. But if the show keeps continuing on this pace, it's going to be a really entertaining watch, just because I feel like a lot of the reasons why shows like this kind of leave people behind is because the pace isn't, fast enough. There aren't enough development or twists in each episode. I forgot to mention that we also learned about how the devouring works. Apparently mine is a person who's a non-noble person born with mana, and that's why she has this weird disease where she's being consumed by her mana, apparently. I don't really like how only noble people can have mana. It's like building in like a natural reason behind the whole class divide. I hope they deconstruct that at some point. It would be really interesting to see how they deal with that. That seems like something that mine wouldn't like either, so I'm assuming she's going to do something about that eventually. But that's it for episode 7. Solid episode. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.